Alright, so this is the next part of the mod loader documentation tutorial series, whatever you want to refer to it as. And in this part, we are going to be talking about actually making our first blueprint logic mod. And this is, again, a continuation of the last few. So we are going to be using the same game. If you haven't watched the previous parts, the game we are using is a Steam game called Undefeated. It is a free game, which is one of the main reasons that I wanted to use it. That way, anybody who wants to follow along can easily follow along and replicate the steps that are happening here. But yeah, so that is the game that we are going to be using again today. And I'm going to start off by jumping right into it. So there's multiple parts to making this. This is going to be quite a longer video. I will have timestamps and stuff, of course, in the description or a pinned comment or something, because this is going to discuss not only how to make a mod, but what everything does so that you can understand better and actually go through and do stuff like debugging your mod if there's a problem, printing stuff out, creating buttons and stuff. So we're going to be going through that very extensively. I do want to say that while the mod loader will always remain open source to the public, free, and all that stuff, I do have a Patreon that you can donate to if you so choose. That just helps me to, dedicate more time to projects like this and other projects that I will be making in the future. And if you end up signing up, you will get early access to all my future projects, whether it be game development stuff, other mod projects. I'm thinking of making a super type of big uh, level editor type mod that might be a Patreon's only thing. So if any of that stuff interests you, or you just want to help support me or any of the projects that I'm working on, feel free to donate a few there. But I digress. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is find the game root install. So basically, you should be familiar with this. And I do want to say ahead of time, you do need some prior Unreal experience to obviously make mods, because in some areas making mods is more complicated than actually writing something from scratch, like a game or something. Not a game, but mini test projects and stuff, because you need to understand the workflow. So you do want some prior Unreal experience, but I'm still going to try and make this as basic as possible. So you're going to want to be in the folder of Undefeated. And what you're going to want to do is, so we need to create our Unreal project. And to do that, we need to find out what engine version the game is on. Now, 9 times out of 10, if you go into the game folder, binaries, Win64, and you right click the exe, go to properties, details, you can see the engine version under the file version thing. So 9 times out of 10, that's how it is. There are some rare times where that won't appear, and there are some workarounds for that, and I might even have a link to one, again, in a comment or a description or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, and for the simplicity of this, it is pretty much always going to be there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to install through the Epic Games Launcher whatever version of the engine that this game runs on. It cannot be newer, it cannot be older. The minor versions, like this is 0.3, if the Unreal Engine 4.18 version out was 4.18.4, that usually doesn't matter. It's the big numbers that you want to worry about. Like, you don't want to make a mod for a game on 4.18. You don't want to make a mod in Unreal Engine 4.19 or 4.17 or 4.20, because so much changes. You're going to have serialization errors. Things are going to mismatch. So you want to keep it as close as possible, definitely on the major versions of stuff. Alright, so you will need to install 4.18. I already have it installed and I already have it opened. So once you basically install it, you're going to want to launch it, and you're going to want to go to New Project. You do not want to create a C++ project. You want it to just be a standard blueprint project. You don't have to include any starter content or anything. I just leave all this stuff as default. You just want it to be a blank project. It doesn't need to be a bunch of space. But for the project name, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to name it the same name as the content folder, pretty much. So If you look at the root folder here, you can see there's the engine folder, the actual content folder, then there's an exe. Sometimes there's other stuff, sometimes there's no exe, but you want to name it the folder that this is named. And if you're not sure for some reason if it is the content folder, in the game folder, you should see a content folder, packs, and whatever the game pack is. So this is called Undefeated, and you're going to want to name your project as such. And you have to name it the exact same as the project, because if you don't, you're going to have, it's not going to work. The way that the mod loader references things, it's not going to mount properly, and it's just not going to work. So you just want to name your project the same as the folder, which in this case is Undefeated. Now, for me, it says the project already exists, and that's because I already have a project created for this. But that wouldn't appear for you, and you would just click the Create Project button, and it would create your project. So, if we hop over into the engine, alright, you will see something like this. And this is where we go to create the very first basic, I guess you could say, very basic mod. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a new folder called mods. You should know how to create a folder, but you right-click, click new folder. In that mods folder, you want to give your mod folder a name. Now, you do want to remember this name, because this is the name that your pack is going to have to be called as well, because the way it references things. I already have an example mod here, and this is documented so that I can, this is more or less for me, but for the sake of argument, I'm just going to name this tester mod. So we're going to create a new folder, tester mod. And in this folder, we want to right click, create a new blueprint class, and create a new actor class. And this is going to be called mod actor. Then you can open it up, you can save it, and basically, this mod actor is what is going to be spawned when you're, this is basically your entry point to a lot of things. So when the mod loader actually starts spawning the mods, it takes whatever the pack name is. In this case, our pack is going to be testermod.pack. It takes the pack name, it uses that as a folder, and it gets your mod actor. So, yeah, that is basically how it works for that. So in this mod actor, a lot of people want to jump and start doing stuff with event begin play and event tick, and while you can use stuff like event tick, I would not recommend using event begin play. We can get rid of these two things right here. There is a custom event, a few of them actually, that we need to make in order to really utilize our mod. And for that, I'm going to quickly hop over into the example mod actor. And these are what we're going to want to create. Don't mind these. So, right here, pre-begin play and post-begin play. Now, pre-begin play is basically, it is called right when the mod is spawned. Now, you usually don't want to use this. It is called so early, in fact, it's called when the game state is initialized. It is called so early in the call chain that a lot of stuff you do here will not work, or it'll be too early for it to be called. For example, for a lot of games, if you create a widget here, your widget will not appear because it's way too early. That is where post-begin play calls. Now, post-begin play is called later in the call chain, and 9 times out of 10, unless you manually change it in the .profile, it is called whenever the player controller begin play is called. So, obviously, it's later down the line. It's very useful, and this is where your entry point is usually going to be. So, how we're going to create these is if we go back to our mod actor, right-click, type in custom event, and then name this pre-begin play. Alright, that's all good. And then we want to create a new custom event called post-begin play. And these two are our very basic entry points. And for the sake of I guess you could say this is technically the first part of this video, we are going to we're going to have this just create a little test widget. That's all. And what we're going to do is we're going to utilize these entry points. So what we want to do now to create our little widget thing, we want to go back into the content browser, our tester mod. And if you've ever used Unreal Engine before, which you should have, you create a new widget. And we're just going to name this Test Boy. And we're just going to create a giant piece of text here. We're going to make it, where's the font? We're going to make it as big as possible. And it's just going to be called Test Mod Loaded. So big that we should not be able to miss that. Anchor that down, compile, and save. Now, we want to go back into our mod actor. And under post begin play, because again, this is where you usually want to call all of your stuff. You're rarely going to use pre-begin play. You only want to use pre-begin play if you're changing things called early in the game, like maybe the game mode pawn or something like that. But you're almost never going to call that, so it's there if you want to use it, but we're going to leave that out. We're also going to leave out event tick for now because we don't need it. But for post begin play, we're going to drag off that and call create widget. The widget we want to create is our test boy. And then we want to add to viewport. And there we go. So this right here, this little bit of code right here is enough to create this widget, this mod system widget thing, and have it appear in game. So in that aspect, we are done. Now what we need to do is find a way to package this into a pack file. Now, there is a lot of methods for doing this. Some people use the Unreal Pack.exe. Some people use something called UnrealPacker.py or something like that. I'm gonna show my method because my method almost works. It almost works for all games. I rarely ever have to use another method. I use Unreal Engine itself to make the packs, and I will show you how. If you go to Edit, Editor Preferences, you want to go to Experimental, and you want to enable something that'll be disabled by default. Allow Chunk ID Assignments. It'll be disabled by default. You want to enable this, and there you go. And then, what you want to do, so basically what this will allow you to do is it'll allow you to manually assign assets into different pack chunks. And this is good because you can separate your mod stuff up. So if we X out of that, we also want it to package chunks. So we need to go to Edit, Project Settings, Packaging, and we want to turn on another thing that'll be turned off by default, Generate Chunks. Now that that's done, what we're going to want to do is save, and we want to go and grab all of the assets we want packaged into our mod. So yeah, we want to grab all of these, right-click, Asset Actions, Assign to Chunk, and we want it to be something memorable, so we're just going to do 69, because I don't have anything else named that right now. And then you need to go to File, Save. Now, when you package this project game thing, these will be packaged under Pack Chunk 69. So you will be able to know where it is, and you'll be able to just rename it and put it in game. So now what we're going to want to do is go to File, Package Project, Windows. I'm going to copy this. And we're going to want to just select and let it package. Now, this could take a bit. It usually doesn't for me because I packaged it already, so it should be cached up. But I will skip to the end part where it is packaged. Alright, so now that it is packaged, you want to go to where it was packaged. So in my case, it was packaged in this Windows Note Editor folder. And we can actually put this right next to our Undefeated game. And you should see that a lot of the file layout should be the same. So, if you go to, in the Undefeated folder for your package project, Content, Packs, you see this Pack Chunk 69. This is where all of your mod stuff was packaged. Now, what you want to do is you want to rename this to be the same name as your folder here. So this was called Test Mod. So we're going to rename this to testmod.pack. Or, not test mod, it's actually tester mod, but still. We want to name it the same. And then, what we want to do is we want to go into undefeated. We want to go into the folder, content, packs. If there isn't a Logic Mods folder already, if the mod loader didn't create one for you, you want to create one for yourself. And in this Logic Mods folder, you want to drag your mod pack over. So there we go. It's dragged over. And that is it. You've created your very basic widget mod. And we're going to try it out right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the mod loader, or the mod launcher exe, I should say. Then open up Undefeated. Wait for it all to load. And you can see test mod loaded. There's a big ass widget right here. So you can see it looks all good. So if you press F1, you can see that the mod loader UI pops up. And this is important because this is diving into the next part of what we're going to be talking about, which I call the mod loader information, or your mod information. If you go into the Logic Mods panel, you see your mod name here, but when you drop it down, you see that it is created by an unknown author, it doesn't have a description, and the version number is unknown. Now, these aren't needed, you can keep them blank, but I have a feeling a lot of people do like signing their mods and stuff like that, so that's what we're going to get into right now. That is the next part of this little thing. We are going to create the mod information stuff that we need. So we can X out of this. And if we go back into our tester mod and our mod actor, I'm also going to open up that example mod again. Now, you can see here, there's something called mod author, mod description, and mod version. These are all strings, and these are all read by the mod loader to fill out the information. So, we're going to want to create these in our own mod actor. And, how might we do that? You want to go over to the variables panel, click add to add a new variable. We're going to call this mod author. We want to go over here and we want to change the type from a boolean to a string. We want to create a new variable and we want to call this mod description. And then we want to go over and add another one, and this will be called mod version. Now, assuming I'm not an idiot and spelled them all correctly, we can fill these out now. So, mod author, Russell.J. That's about right. Mod description, YouTube mod. I spelled that wrong, but that doesn't matter. And mod version, we're going to do 1.6.9. There we go. Compile. Save. Now, again, assuming everything is spelled correctly, because that is an issue that ends up happening. Assuming everything is spelled correctly, you can compile, save, and then you're going to just repackage your mod. So package project, Windows 64, package again, and once again, I will be back once it is completely packaged. Alright, so our mod packaged, and again, you can see pack chunk 69 is here again. So what we want to do is we want to go back through our content folders, packs, logic mods, and we want to delete our old tester mod.pack, drag our pack chunk 69 where our stuff is stored over, and rename that to tester mod.pack. Now we can just open the mod loader again and open up Undefeated. Alright, now if we press F1, go into Logic Mods, Tester Mod, look at this, created by Russell.J, description, YouTube mod, and version 1.6.9. Now, that is obviously a good sign, everything's working. So you can now label your mods, and this should hopefully help prevent things like mod theft and other dumb stuff. But there we have it for the mod information. So, now, a big thing that people complain about, and it is completely in their right to complain about because it is the truth, they don't feel like they have enough control over their mods. For example, if you constantly, if let's say 100 people are making mods, right? And all of those 100 people create their own widgets like this, it's going to clutter the screen. It's going to get disgusting. You're not going to be able to see anything. And the way some people fix that is they bind that to a key. But the issue is this. There's only so many keys on a keyboard that aren't already used in a game. How long until that runs out and people are overlapping with each other? It's useless at that point. So that's where something called mod buttons come in. And you can see again if I press F1 and go down here, there's a little panel here called mod buttons. So I give the option for people to make as many buttons as they want directly in the mod loader UI. Obviously, they don't have to use this. They can do their post load. They can do whatever they choose to do. But this does make people's lives easier, and it prevents a lot of issues that happen with mods overlapping and stuff like that. So that is going to be what we talk about and do next. So if we X out of the undefeated, open up Unreal, we're going to open up this mod actor again, and next we're going to be talking about this right here. This mod buttons array. It is an array of strings. And basically, this is the way it works, and I'll show you. So the first thing we want to do, just for the setup, before I actually explain how it works, we want to go back into your mod actor, add a new variable, call this mod buttons, and we want to change this while it is a string, it isn't a variable like reference. This is an actual array, and an array is this little blocky thing right here. We can compile and save that. We also need a custom function, another one, just like these two. If you scroll and look in this mod actor, there is something called mod menu button pressed. Let me drag these out. So if this event is created, buttons will appear in your loader GUI under your mod section thing. Now, this can be used to manually call things, like I was saying before. So what you want to do, you want to create a custom event in your mod actor. And for the record, all of these custom events that I'm showing you right at this moment only work in your mod actor. If you declare these anywhere else, it won't work. Again, that just covers for what we're talking about now. There is an exception to that rule, but I'll get into that in a minute. So mod button menu pressed, and then we want to click add for a new input variable. We want to name this index. Shouldn't really matter what you name it, but you want to name index, and you want to turn this from a boolean to an integer value. Now, let's compile, save, and this is how this works. So you want to drag off from the index and type in switch on int. And this is how this works. If you go to your mod buttons array and you add a new, technically it's a string value, but this is going to be a button value, or at least it's going to be read and interpreted as such. So we're going to call this test. Now, you see this index right here. This index are the indexes that are here. And as you add pins, basically, depending on what button you press, it depends on what will be returned. So, for example, if there will be a new button because you added this into your string array called test. If you press test, it'll fire this custom event. The index will be 0, and it's going to fire off whatever is done on 0. If I add another button called new test, it will fire off on 1. So basically, you just want to match these pins up with the indexes here. It's really not that complicated if you've done stuff like this before. It might be a little bit of weird territory, but it's fine. But for the sake of argument, we're going to want 2 buttons for now. Actually, no, we're going to do 3. And the last one's just going to be called widget test. And this is for a very important reason, because we are not going to be creating our widget on post begin play anymore. We're going to try and create it when we press a button. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click here, break the link, drag the create test widget boy down here, and hook that up to 2. So when we call widget test, this stuff should be called, and when we call test or new test, you know, nothing should happen because we're not actually doing anything on those events. But we're going to compile, save, and then go, and we're going to package once again. And again, I'll speed this up and cut to right when it's done being packaged. Alright, so it packaged again. You can see your pack chunk 69 here. If I go back into the packs folder, logic mods, let's get the name of that and delete it. If we drag our pack chunk over, we rename it to tester mod. Now, let's open up the mod loader and let's open up undefeated. And as you can see, the widget is no longer created on that post begin play like it was before. Now, moment of truth, we press F1. We go into logic mods, tester mod, mod buttons. There we go. We have all of our mod buttons. Now, again, if we press the first one, the second one, they should do nothing because we didn't set up anything for that to be done there. But if we press the widget test, boom, our widget gets created. And actually, you can just keep creating the widget and you'll probably cause a crash, but still. So, there we have it. We have our mod buttons set up. So you have more control over your mods, and you can have people have more control over your mods. You know, if you have something with little switches and shit like that, you can easily do that. So, for, I guess you could say, main mod loader functionality for basic mods and stuff, that is pretty much it. But I want to show you all another thing, and this is very important to testing your mods. And this is about mod debugging. So if you use UE4, you know you can do something called print string, but that doesn't work in compiled builds and it doesn't work with mods and stuff. But there is a custom event function that I created for this mod loader that you can call that will be printed out here. Now this can help you with a lot of debugging of your mods. If something isn't being called, you can find out if it's working, if it's being called, all that jazz. So that is what we're going to create next, and that's actually, I think, the final thing we're going to be creating and showing for this specific video. So if we go back into the Unreal Engine, let's go back to the example mod actor I had. So right here, this custom event called print2modloader. It has no code on it, but it is wrapped by my mod loader and given functionality and code for what it needs to do. So, basically, you're going to want to create this. So let's just copy the name for me. Print2modloader. Custom event. And we just want a string input called message. Again, this should be simple. We're going to want to change from an integer to a string. Change that to message. There we go. So we can call this now. And I want to digress a bit back to what I said before. So if you remember, I said that this, and this, these three events, I guess you could say, the three amigos of events, are only able to be called in the mod loader actor. Now that is true. This one can be called anywhere. So, for example, if I go into this widget, and, oh, that's the wrong widget. If I go into my tester mod, and this right here, if I add, let's say, a button here, and I on pressed, if I create that same event in here, and I call it print2modloader. Hold up, let's compile that first. Print2modloader, and I call this button go burr. That'll print to the mod loader. And the same thing can be said in the mod actor or anywhere else where you create a custom event with this name and input. So we're also going to utilize this in the mod actor. So if you remember, buttons 0 for test and new test, they didn't do anything because there's nothing connected here. So to make sure that they work when we call them, we're going to do some debugging. So we're going to drag off and we're going to call print2modloader. We're going to call that again for here, and we're going to call this, what was the first one called? Test button. So we're going to call this test button called, and we're going to call this one new test button called. And there you go. With this stuff set up now, let's make this look a little bit clean and pretty. If we compile, save, and we also compile, save, in theory, we're going to be able to see if this little debugging test thing works. So we want to go to File, Package Project, Windows 64, package it. And once again, I will cut back once this is all packaged and fixed up and done. Alright, as you can see, it is packaged once again. And it's a little bit bigger now, but we go into Undefeated, Content, Packs, Logic Mods. Let's copy the name of this pack, delete it. If we drag our pack chunk over, rename it. And again, when it comes to packaging your pack, if you have another method of doing this that you're more comfortable with, please feel free to do it. How you actually get the U assets into a pack, it doesn't matter. I'm using the method that I find easiest. This might not be the easiest to you. Some people like using other programs and other software for that kind of stuff. And if you want to do that, note that it will not have any issues with my mod loader. Or at least it really shouldn't. So, that again, wanted to just state that again. If we go and open the mod launcher again. And then we open Undefeated. Alright, now, if we press F1, Logic Mods. Alright, moment of truth, let's press the test button. Test button called. And you can see in here, test button called. Let's try the next one. New test button called. So the both of them that we call in the mod actor are easily called. So that is good for what we're doing. Now, for the moment of truth, we're going to test the one that is outside the mod actor. So we're going to press button 3 to create the widget. And then we're going to press this little testing block. Ha 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 ha, mod go burr. As you can see, it prints as many times as we press it. So printing works anywhere as long as you have that custom event created beforehand. So in the sense of creating a basic, I guess you could say a basic logic mod, that is all the functionality that you have available at your fingertips to create what you want. And basically, that you obviously can build upon this and do all your stuff, but these are the entry points and main things that I wanted to note down and tell people, because I think this is the most important stuff when it comes to the mod loader. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything by looking at my example mod. Nope, everything is covered. I guess I could explain a little more. You can skip this, I guess you could say next minute or something like that. Just want to explain what this does. You know, pre-begin play is called on the game state initializer when that's called. This is usually called when the player controller is set up. And of course, this is called whenever one of your mod buttons is pressed through this array and stuff like that. So, I don't really think there's much more to explain that you need to know. But that's generally everything I think that needs to be covered when it comes to, like I said a million times before, this specific group of things. Now, that is pretty much the end for this part of the tutorial or documentation or whatever you want to call it. But in the next part, or I guess you could say not the next part, but a continuation, what is left to cover in this series, is we're going to cover very basic, I guess you could say, SDK-based C++ mod thing. But more importantly than that, we're going to cover wrapping and stuff like that. So that is going to be important, because I'm going to show you how to like read and write to a text file from, I guess you could say, your blueprint and your DLL mod. So that's going to be really cool to cover. But yeah, I think in terms of covering the basics or what's needed to be known, I think that about covers everything. We have working mods, and you can take what you have learned here and build upon, call spawn actor on things, whatever you end up choosing to do. You have a solid foundation now to build up, which is the goal of the mod loader. It is meant to be a foundation, a sturdy one, that you can build up from and create crazy, amazing things that, you know, you want, and mod games to your degree of addiction level when it comes to modding things. But yeah, that is pretty much the end for this part.